take a second to write down what I have on the board, and then I'll explain what it all means in a second, okay? Again, this is going to be our last way of solving quadratics. Okay, so it's going to be the one that's going to be most fresh in your mind. It's going to be the one that you're going to probably understand the most. Again, I haven't put the quadratic formula up there yet, but you will see it soon. Now, make sure you all have your calculators out. Is there anybody that doesn't have a calculator in front of them? How many people don't have one? Who else? We got one then. Wait, I got mine too, hold on.
You sort it out. I'll go by.
Who else? Who else doesn't have one? Alright, make sure I get all my calculators back. That's my personal one. Alright, so everybody's got a calculator, right? Make sure you have them all on. Because I want you to make sure that you're doing this with us and making sure that it's making sense when I tell you how to put them into your calculators. Okay? You are going to need your calculator when you're doing the quadratic formula because it's a plug and chug is really what it is. Okay? And you'll understand what I mean when I say plug and chug. Alright, now, we're going to start off by first of all telling you that a quadratic equation has to be in standard form. What do I mean when I say standard form? It has to be set equal to what number?
0.
0. So if an equation is not in standard form, you have to make sure that you put it in standard form first. Next, okay, you need to, well, and I should say, let me go back a little bit. I want to kind of ahead of myself. So this is in standard form, okay? ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 is standard form. So make sure the equation is set equal to 0. Where a is not equal to 0, a cannot be equal to 0, okay, here? Okay, it can be equal to 1, it can be equal to anything else, except it can't be 0. And this is what we call the discriminant. You'll notice that here in the next section. B squared minus 4ac is what we call the discriminant. And you're going to see that it's going to help you determine the number of solutions of any quadratic equation. But that has to be greater than or equal to 0. And you'll notice that when I write the quadratic formula down. So here's the quadratic formula. So I want everybody to write nice and big in your notes. Okay, here it is. X equals, because obviously our solutions are x equals, we know that. The opposite, I don't want you to say negative b here, it means the opposite of b, plus or minus. Okay, we understand plus or minus now? How many times have we done plus or minus when we're doing square roots? A lot, right? Plus or minus the square root of underneath the radical is called b squared minus 4 times a times c, or 4ac. All over, now don't forget the all over because sometimes people forget and they only write this down. All over 2a, or 2 times a, and this is the quadratic formula. Right there. Okay? That's what we're going to use today. We're going to use that formula to solve any quadratic equation I give you today. Okay? X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, some of you guys are going to memorize that. I know that there's tons of people who have done it in the past. Okay? Sometimes they think it's kind of quirky, but still, whatever works for you. Whatever works for you. Do it. Okay? Now, we're not going to ask you to memorize this right now. Okay? So don't worry about that right now. We want you right now to understand how to use it. That's the most important part, is how do you use the quadratic formula? Okay? How do you use it? Alright. Now, there's going to be some steps I want you to go through when we do this. So we're going to go ahead and go right into an example. I'm going to show you step by step how I want you to do it. I want you to go through it, okay? Have your calculators ready, okay? Let's go ahead and try one. Okay, we're going to use the quadratic formula to solve this equation. We're going to start off a little bit easier on the first one, and then we'll get a little harder on some more. Example 1, we're going to solve. Okay, using quadratic formula, using the quadratic formula. Okay, let's do this one. Let's do x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 0. Okay, so we've started off with a pretty basic one. Is this equation, class, in standard form? Tell me, is it or is it not in standard form? Is it?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Why is it, we have it equal to what number? 0, right. So it's in standard form, so we can check that kind of off our list. It is in standard form. The next thing I want you to do is identify the values for A, B, and C. Look, A is what's in front of your x squared term, B is in front of my x, and obviously C is my constant term. So what's my A up here, class? 1. Good. What's in front of my x squared is 1. What's my B? -8. And what's my C? 16. You remember when we were doing all that before, when we were doing the graphing, and I said, guys, don't worry about what C is right now. But did you notice that I was having you still identify C all through? And this is why. Because I want you to know how to identify those values A, B, and C in any quadratic equation, because ultimately we're going to get to the quadratic formula and use all 3 values. So A, B, and C, that's huge. Why do you think it's very, very important for me to identify A, B, and C? Because look at the quadratic formula and tell me, what do you notice I'm plugging in? Am I plugging in all 3 values into this quadratic formula? I sure am. And that's the part. Now is where the plug and chug comes from. All this is, now it might seem a little bit tedious in the beginning because you're doing all this, putting all these values in for A, B, and C. But then we have to work through it and get to our final answers. All right, here we go. So now we use the quadratic formula. Now that we've identified the 3 values, and this is huge right here. This is important to see though, so that you can go back to what A, B, and C is. So x equals the opposite, now watch how I do this. The opposite of in parentheses, I always want you to put your B in parentheses. Okay, even if it's positive or negative, I don't care. What do I put here for B? -8. So all I'm doing, guys, is the opposite of B. What's next up there? Plus and minus the square root of what? Do I do this? What am I missing? Parentheses. Always make sure that you put your B when you square it in parentheses. So B squared, what class? Minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is 16. Notice I'm putting all my values in what? That's a safe bet. Put those in parentheses so that you don't miss any. Because putting them in parentheses doesn't hurt. It just don't. It obviously is just a kind of a safety net. Okay. 2 times, and then what's A? 2 times 1. So the first part of this, guys, after we identify A, B, and C, is just to plug all the values in. That's the first part. And that seems, like I said, sometimes a little tedious, but it's important that we don't miss any values for putting in for A, B, and C. So I'm going to give you a second to finish that. Make sure you have all those values in. Everybody with me so far? All we did is what? We just plugged in all the values following the formula. That's all we've done so far. Now comes the simplifying part. This I'm going to do step by step. Okay? Along the way, as you get more comfortable with this, you may not do all these steps that I do. But I want you right now for your notes to do the steps with me. All right, here we go. X equals. Okay? What is the opposite of -8? 8. So we're going to put positive 8 there. Okay? Plus or minus. Now what I'm going to do now is we're going to simplify this, what goes under here. So in your calculators right now, when everybody get their calculators out, and do this with me. Okay? Ready to go? So everybody has a calculator, correct? Here we go. Don't worry about the radical. I don't want you to put this right now. I just want you to put these numbers right here in, underneath the radical. So start with parenthesis, -8 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 16, and then push equals. Okay, raise your hand if you have an answer for me. Okay? Hunter, what do you have? -28. Did you put -8 squared in parentheses?
I have to. Oh.
Yep, that's the reason why. That was a good point though, Hunter. Do you see why that came out to be a negative when it shouldn't be a negative? Yep. All right. Yes.
I got 0.
You got 0. Who else got 0? Okay. Let's give Hunter a second. We can try to do that again. So Hunter, let's make sure you get 0. Okay. Okay. Yes, it is 0. Because watch. What is -8 squared? 64. 64, I'm just gonna do it over here. 64 minus 4 times 1 is? 4 times 16 is 64. So what is 64 minus 64? 0. Good. And let's see if that makes sense. Is this okay? This is what was underneath the radical. Is 0 greater than or equal to 0? So we're okay. So we can get 0 under the radical. Did you get it, Leonard? Awesome. All right. Okay. Over. What's 2 times 1? 2. Okay. In one step, guys, we've gone from that to this. That wasn't too hard, was it? All it was making sure that we simplified that discriminant, which is the value under the radical there. Okay. Now let's simplify even further. What is, guys, the square root of 0? 0. So can we simplify this even further and go x equals 8, what? Plus or minus 0 all over 2. Now tell me this. Let's see how many solutions we get. Okay? And we're not going to really get into determining the number of solutions until tomorrow when we talk about discriminant. Okay, so now I'm going to get only one answer here. Why? Well, watch what happens. Now I want someone to do this for me. I want someone to go 8 plus 0 divided by 2 and tell me what you get. 8 plus 0 divided by 2, just like that, just like I said. What do you get, Bailey?
8.
You get 8? Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
You just did 8 plus 0 and then divided by 2?
Yeah.
Really? Anybody get something different?
Alright.
Oh, never mind. It will work out. Okay. Sometimes what happens is if you don't put something in parentheses, it'll come out with the wrong answer. But okay, it worked okay. All right. So everyone understand that if we go x equals, let me set the two separate equations and show you how we get the same answer. So we get 8, x equals 8 plus 0 divided by 2. But what's the other equation look like? Yes, exactly. X equals 8 minus 0 divided by 2. Now, okay, no, that is right. That did prove my point. Okay, so what did you guys say you got for the answer again?
8.
8. But should that be the right answer? Should that be the answer?
No.
8?
4.
It should be 4, shouldn't it? Now, why do you think your calculator got 8 as an answer if I told you to go 8 plus 0 divided by 2? No parentheses, right? Because what is your calculator reading or thinking? It's thinking what you're putting into it. It's reading this. That's what you just put in your calculator, right? So what's the calculator going to do first? No. It's going to divide 0 by 2 first and get what?
0.
0. And what's 0 plus 8? You see why your calculator is, it's just doing what you're telling it to do. It's just being, it's just saying, okay, you're telling me to do this. I'm following the order of operations. So I'm dividing 0 by 2 and get 0. 0 plus 8 is 8. That's why it's so very important to do this, guys. What do we know about fractions? We always simplify the numerator and then divide by. So look, don't we need to make sure we add 8 and 0 first? What's 8 plus 0? Then divide that by 2. There you go. Now, is there a way we could do this without having to worry about doing that? Can we just put this in parentheses? Now your calculator is going to realize, oh, you're telling me to add 8 and 0 first and get 8, and then divide that by 2 and get 4. Now guys, what's this answer going to be?
4.
Also 4. Why are they going to be the same answer?
Because you're adding and subtracting by 0.
Exactly, Kaya. You're adding to 0 and subtracting by 0. Does that change the result? No. So that's why when this number right here under the radical, which we call the discriminant, is 0, we're always only going to get one answer. Okay? So if this number under the radical is 0, you always know that you're only going to get one answer. You don't need to put them twice, that same answer twice. But understand, very careful here, guys. Do not just put it in 8 plus 0 divided by 2. Your calculator is going to come up with the wrong answer because you're inputting it incorrectly for the It's not the calculator's fault. It's the person putting it in. That is fault for that. So make sure you go 8 plus 0 equals, or just know what 8 plus 0 is, push equals, and then divide by 2. 8 minus 0, push equals, and then divide by 2. Or put the parentheses in the top. Okay? Very, very important that we don't get incorrect answers for that. All right, does that make sense so far?